Hey, welcome to the Cam and Otis show. Man, Cam, I think we're on a streak here, buddy. My favorite phrase yet again. One of my really good friends is on the show, and this has been a long time coming. Having Hark the Herald on our show, and you can't go wrong with a name like that. I mean, even though it's not his real name, we all know about how the Air Force and those folks with call signs and stuff like that. But what Hark is doing, man, is I get excited every time I talk to him. We hang out, drink beer, we shoot the shit over the phone, and man, it's like not only is he giving back to the veteran community through Bunker Labs, but the way he does it and who he's helping to grow and help veterans succeed is just amazing. Hark, man, sorry for my diatribe lead in, brother, but it's good to have you on the show finally.
Oh, I'm used to it, Otis. You know that. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I appreciate the opportunity. Cam, always good to see you as well. I'm excited about the chance to kind of share some of what Bunker is doing, Bunker Labs, as well as wherever else we want to delve in.
Yeah, well, I want to start off with something I've always had fun when you and I have done a couple of working things together is design thinking. Because I don't think a whole lot of people understand what design thinking really is. So I'd love if you just give us a little bit of nugget of, because you're still maintaining that business
Yes.
on the shelf,
Yes.
but it's still there. So give us a little bit of insight into design thinking Denver.
Yeah, so Design Thinking Denver is built around design thinking, hence the amazing name. But it's design thinking is human-centered design. It's about keeping your customer at the center of what you're doing as you're developing your service, your process, your product, right? It's applicable across a broad range. And it's all about making sure you know what your customer needs. Now, it's not always what they say they need, but it's what they actually need. So in design thinking, we actually, there's lots of, you can Google it. There's lots of different models out there. I'm a fan of the double diamond approach, which is what I use when we do this. And no, it's not just for the skiing, Otis. But the double diamond approach is about, you start with your opportunity or your challenge statement, and then you diverge in the problem space, trying to make sure you understand the context, the situation, that you really have a good grasp of the problem space. And then you converge in that problem space to what is the real challenge you want to tackle, because sometimes you find out it's not what you initially thought. But because you're in the problem space, you find out the right challenge that you want to take on or that your customer needs solved. A lot of people want to jump straight to the solutioning phase, and that's hard. You need to stay in the problem space. So you've diverged, you've converged. Now we're going to diverge again in the solution space. And this is the opportunity to look at lots of different ways to solve the challenge, whatever it is. And we approach it from desirability first. You really want to be in if you had a Venn diagram, you would see a circle with desirability, a circle with feasibility, and a circle with viability. You want to be where the Venn diagram intersects, but you want to start with the desirability and then apply the constraints of technical feasibility and business viability. Because otherwise, if you start in the other two circles, you can make incremental improvements, but you're not really going to be nailing it. So anyway, so we diverge in the solution space, and then we converge again using prototyping, minimum viable product, to really make sure that we're solving the challenge before we invest a lot of time, money, and effort into it. And the prototypes may be, diagrams, they may be, very rudimentary applications, whatever it is, but prototype. And one of the things with prototypes is you prototype to learn. So you have to get your prototype in the hands of your customers. You have to get it in the hands of those who you're trying to solve the problem for. And if they don't like it, that's okay. That's feedback. And you don't pursue that any farther. So it's a double diamond. You diverge in the problem space, converge, diverge in the solution space, converge, and then you move. Now, it looks like a straight line, but it's really iterative. Okay.
Mhm.
But it's just easier to draw if it's in a line.
Oh, it's there's some key pieces that I think you touched on. I just want to reemphasize them because what does everybody want to do? Everybody wants to jump forward and solve the problem. I mean, when Miss Suzanne comes and says she's having problem X, Y, Z with the business, what do I want to do? Oh, well, you just need to do this, this, and this, right? I want to jump and give her the solution. But that's not where you find the best answer. You find the best answer understanding the problem set, and then going back, creating the solutions. And then the other piece I thought was critical, and I know, not bet, I know from personal experience that a lot of businesses don't do this. You put together that MVP and you release it. You give it to your customers. Hey, does this work? Right? I mean, man, people look at that and they're like, oh, time, money, Camden's favorite sunk cost fallacy, that whole thing. Camden, you didn't think we'd get into economics today, did you? But
I'm always ready.
You're always ready for that, though. But that whole thing, right? Because if you don't test it, how do you know what's the right answer? Man, yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Hark. That's great.
Yeah. So just a couple other things. So one of the real benefits with design thinking, well, there's a lot of benefits, right? You're bringing diverse perspectives to bear, because typically when you do this, depending on the size of the company or whatever, but you may have ops, engineering, sales, marketing, everybody's involved, right? So you bring a lot of different perspectives to bear to make sure that your solution that you're coming up with doesn't break a different department because you didn't even know they had a need in there. And the people who are going to be implementing this are the people who are building it, because we use the how might we phraseology, how, and that's different than how should we or can we, because how says there is a way, might implies a very broad perspective as opposed to can or should, and we, because we're the people who are going to implement it. So we use the how might we phraseology, and it brings the people into it, right? So even if what they want isn't what in the end gets selected, they at least understand why, right? They're bought into it, because people feel powerless when change is done to them, but powerful when change is done by them. So you want to get them involved in that.
That's right from one of my favorite business books, Leading Change, by Cotter. And that buy-in, and that is definitely one method of getting buy-in. I'll just throw out my favorite buy-in story was NATO Special Operations writing an op plan for Afghanistan, and basically said, hey, come on, everybody can come on and join us and provide your input, but if you don't join us, you can't provide input. Therefore, silence is compliance, is what I told them. And you know what? We were highly successful in putting together that plan and executing it. So yeah, I love the fact it's the fundamentals of planning. Yeah.
Exactly.
Something I really loved there, was the focus on desirability that you mentioned, Hark, because to me, this really reminds me a lot of, how I like to lead in a problem solving setting. And Norman, when you go through editing this will ring home with him from our Verby days. But one of my biggest pet peeves when I'm in that brainstorming kind of big picture solving problems environment is people who get latched on to the feasibility aspects and then never let themselves see the big picture. Because when you just look at like what's feasible, you're automatically pigeonholing yourself. Because if our business is worth doing, then it's going to break a little bit of that feasibility barrier, I would think, at some point. And so it's really important to start off on like what I would call like a magic wand type solution is always the way I put it in my teams, where it's like, okay, hey, magic wand, what does this look like? If we could just change the whole world, change human behavior, all that kind of stuff, whatever, what's the solution look like? Boom. And then you set that out there and then you go, okay, now from there, what is the feasibility aspect? So I love how you have that worked in there.
Yeah, it is. The desirability is where it all starts, because if you design something that nobody wants, you've wasted a lot of time, money, energy, etc. So it really is about focusing first on desirability and then applying the other filters.
One of the things that always comes up on solutions like this, a technique. I've had people ask me in various formats also, does that apply to me, the solopreneur? Does that apply to us the, multi-billion-dollar corporation. And yeah, just kind of hit on that real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, whether you're a solopreneur, you still want to, right, give your customers what they want, or otherwise you're not going to be in business very long. So that involves talking to the customers, right? Understanding what their needs and desires are. So I've used the design thinking process with anywhere from the Broomfield Library to the partnership marketing department at the Denver Broncos, to numbered air forces in the military, the Department of Defense CIO, tackling challenges there. We used it at my final assignment was at the Air Force Academy in the Springs to help set up the Cyber Innovation Center. We used it there with cadets to look at Air Force challenges in cyber. The process is really universal. And that's why I got into that when I left the Air Force, is because it is applicable across a broad range. There are different tools or techniques you may use depending on the challenge or the size of the organization or whatever, but the thought process and the approach is consistent.
I was curious, kind of generically speaking, where do you see more pitfalls in organizations, on the smaller side or the larger side? Because I could see advantages to both in this kind of a method.
Yeah, more, I don't know. I think there's opportunities everywhere for pitfalls. Again, I think it goes to people thinking they know what the customer wants, as opposed to actually finding out. And if possible, you want to do observation, as opposed to just asking the customers. Again, depending on your product or service, right? But when I was out at Carnegie Mellon School of Design going through a boot camp there on it, they used the example of, there was a study group looking at the elderly and how they access their medications at home, right? So pill bottles, et cetera. And so they're asking people, like, do you have any problem? And so they asked this elderly woman, they said, do you have any problem getting your pills? And she said, nope. They go, with their pill bottle, you don't have any problem? She said, nope. They said, okay, can you show us? Because they wanted to see if she leveraged it or what she did. She took it over to the deli meat slicer, sliced the top off, and said, no problem. Because in her mind, so again, customers will tell you what they think they need or they want, or what they, how, if they already have an adaptation that removes that obstacle. So it's important to, when you can, to observe as opposed to just asking.
That's great. I was thinking, I got rid of my deli slicer a while ago, but I got a meat cleaver, so I think I could probably solve the problem the same way.
Yeah, and Cam, on your point earlier about people squashing, right, during the brainstorming session or whatever, when they're applying technical or business viability, when you're trying to just generate a bunch of ideas, it's important to do that, because the more idea, even if an idea is not feasible, it may spark something else, right? So you don't want to shut down those ideas. One of a good way to get people to do that, especially when you're dealing with introverts who may get shut down in a brainstorming session where everybody's talking, right? You're up doing, is what we call a brain writing exercise. And that is where you have them sit at their desk quietly and by themselves, basically brainstorm, right? But they're writing them down on Post-its, and then you can have them share, but it gives them opportunity and they don't get shut down.
I love that. I've done brain dumps on my own, and I could see how that kind of connects the two there for the brainstorming sessions. I had one question I wanted to put out there, and I'm not sure how off this is on this, but when we're talking about understanding what the customer really needs, what they really want versus what they say that they need or want, it makes me think a lot to something I talk about in some of my coaching with clients about, wants versus want to wants, how we as people kind of tend to have this idea of who we want to be. And so we have all these things. My favorite example is hiking. Like, I want to hike. I don't actually want to hike, because if I wanted to hike, I would be out there right now. It's that little bit of a separation there. How does that play into the design thinking, marketing to wants versus marketing to wants?
Yeah, I think that goes into the, again, staying in the problem space or the challenge space, right? Is understanding, why do you want to hike? Like,
Hmm.
okay, let's remove you want to hike, but why do you, is it because it fulfills an egoistic, like, look at me, I'm a big hiker? Is it because you've heard from other people the endorphins they get and you want to do that? So let's
Hmm.
tackle the real want, not what you say you want, right?
Hmm.
It is what is the motivation behind wanting that, and then we can see if there's other ways to solve for that.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm laughing because it makes me think of one of the best commercials I've seen. I hope y'all have both seen this. You guys seen the Ford truck commercial for the new one that's got all of the tools and everything built in, the power source and the generator and all that, and it's the guy just building a cabin in the woods with his dog. And it is the best example of what you're talking about there that I've seen in marketing, at least, because it's selling a Ford truck the entire time. All you're seeing
Right.
is Ford logos. But what it's really, selling the idea is, or so it's selling the idea that you just get to go out into the woods and spend time with your dog and build a cabin and get away from everything. And it's like, that is the most attractive thing about the truck right there. That is like the American idea of the truck, is just going off grid and just building your own stuff and hanging out with your dog. And they're able to connect those two there because it's, just like you're saying, Hark, it's the why behind that one.
Right, exactly. That's the key. That's what you solve for. Because it's about the human, it's not about the vehicle. Human-centered design.
So if only we all had Ford pickups, we could spend more time in the woods. That's wait, time out on that one. Don't buy a Ford pickup so you can spend more time in the woods, because I got a Ford pickup. I spend time in the woods, and I don't want all y'all coming out there. No offense. That kind of defeats the purpose if all y'all are around in my pickups. Because you know what, there is, now that you say that, Camden, thinking about commercials, I saw one this weekend watching football where it was the same thing. I think it was a tire commercial. Dude drives out, he's all off road and going through all this stuff, pulls up to this beautiful scenic view, gets out of his truck, puts his hands on his hips, looks like he's conquered the world. And you hear off to the side, "Hey buddy, you want a hot dog?" Because that guy had the same tires that he has. So be careful. Be careful.
Exactly.
On that, one thing I'm really interested in, with, talking about design thinking Denver, we already kind of naturally went into like the marketing advertising side of that. Do you think this is something that when teams and organizations follow this process, that the marketing naturally follows that order because of the understanding of the problem better? Or do you think that it's kind of two separate issues there?
Yeah, I mean, I think if your marketing department or your marketing person or the person who does everything else and also your marketing, right, depending on how big you are, right? I mean, that goes to the buy-in and the understanding of what you're really trying to solve. So having those people involved in what you're building, right, is a great way to do that. And it should help with their understanding of what are you really trying to convey in your marketing.
Well, I want to shift now because I don't want to. One of my favorite veteran nonprofits is Bunker Labs. Love that space. I love the entrepreneur spirit that we pull out of the guys. Just start us off with just a little bit of because I don't think, I mean, I talk to a lot of people and I'm still surprised that we're still not getting the word out there. So give us a nugget for Bunker Labs. What is it?
Yeah, so Bunker Labs is a national nonprofit supporting military veteran, military spouse, small business owners, and startups. So we exist to serve military spouse and military veteran entrepreneurs. That's the reason we exist. And why do we do that? We do that because small business owners are the backbone of America and are going to be rebuilding this country, and military veterans and military spouses are uniquely suited to tackle those challenges. At Bunker, we have a founders first mentality. It's about the founder. So we care more about the founder succeeding than their company succeeding, if that makes sense. Because founders are going to tackle tough challenge. That's what they do. They tackle tough challenges, whether it's in a nonprofit, a for-profit, academia, government, it doesn't matter. Founders are the ones who tackle the tough challenges. So if you're in one of our programs and you shift, you pivot, you change, you decide, hey, I don't want to do this business, I want to do something else, we're like, that's great. How can we help you? It's about the founders.
And that's the right attitude, right? I love that about it, because it is in the end about the person. And I've seen it, because I've worked with, mentored a couple of guys over the years where they started off with this business, then it's like, that ain't working. That they probably did some design thinking and came up with a prototype that didn't float so well. So then they shifted, created another business, and then that one didn't work either, unfortunately. I don't know if that's a reflection on me or not, but
yeah, but again, it's all about again, we don't take equity in companies. We don't, if you're in our programs, if you're a military veteran, military spouse, there's no charge. It's all about serving the entrepreneurs. So we do that. We have 3 programs that we run. We have our Veterans in Residence program, which started right here in Denver, which is a 6-month incubator program in partnership with WeWork, the co-working spaces. And so it's 6 months in, we're now in 23 locations. We added 1 more this time, and we'll continue to do that as demand indicates, right? So it's a 6-month incubator program designed for companies that have a business entity established, but they're relatively new in the entrepreneurial, right? But they have to have a business entity established. They have to have something going on, and we prefer them with traction. We're industry agnostic in our Veterans in Residence program. So I don't care if you're a consultant, if you're designing an app, if you're a farmer, if you're a construction agency, if you're drones, it doesn't matter. We are industry agnostic. It's really about the geography and the community and the ecosystem in that location. So that's the Veterans in Residence program, or VIR, a 6-month incubator designed for that stage of company. Another program we have is our CEO Circle, which is like a monthly mastermind, right? This is about getting together with other companies, and we align it by industry. So you have industry alignment. So you're in with other construction companies or real estate companies or whatever, right? Cyberspace security companies. It is in partnership with JP Morgan. The Chase banks have been outstanding partners for us, and we just relaunched this program in November with Jamie Dimon, actually the CEO of JP Morgan, coming and kicking it off, having a conversation with 43 military veteran, military spouse entrepreneurs, which was amazing. But it's a monthly mastermind with 4 in-person events throughout the time frame, where they actually get together. They fly in. We have a fly-in forum. They're actually together. Otherwise, they meet monthly virtually. And this is designed for companies farther along. The initial program we launched in November, we set a $5 million or more recurring revenue baseline. And that was, I think the average was like 13.8 million, but like a couple people were way on the top. So like the median was more like 7 million.
Yeah, we've had a couple on the show
Yeah.
And 1 or 2 of them were
Awesome.
I think it was the optical. I'm drawing a blank on his name.
Oh, yeah.
I think they were right around 50 mil.
Yeah.
They're doing well. They're doing real well.
Yeah. And so we launched that program in November. We're looking to expand that and to also maybe hit the $1 to $5 million time revenue frame, because right now we have the VIR, which is just getting started, and then 5 million or more. So we realize there's an opportunity there, there's a need there. So we're looking to expand that. And then so VIR, CEO Circle, and then the third program is our ambassador program, which is our volunteers in each of the communities that actually run they facilitate the Veterans in Residence program, as well as are connected in the local community to bring in resources to help the entrepreneurs in the VIR program. That ambassador program is basically a fellowship where we select the people. You apply, we select you, provide training, and that also includes in-person sessions throughout the year, as well as virtual collaborative across the community's opportunities. So those are our 3 programs.
How do you balance the need to solve other problems for the customers in this case, and creating those new programs with the need to stay true to the current programs and make sure that they're getting up and running? How do you balance that as a leader?
Yeah, so we were prior to the pandemic, we were an events-driven organization. We threw bunker brews, we had musters, we had all of these things, and obviously with the pandemic, people going to events kind of rapidly died out. And so
that's an understatement, Hark. Rapidly died out.
So we pivoted. We looked at what do our customers need, what do these entrepreneurs need? And so that's really when we developed and settled into this 3 programs. We have 3 programs. We're not going to have, there's lots of other things we can chase. We're not going to. We're going to do 3 programs. We have a program, the Veterans in Residence. We're going to have a CEO Circle, a mastermind for companies farther along. And we're going to have a fellowship program for our volunteers in the field to make it worthwhile for them to have, because most of them are entrepreneurs. So we want to help them succeed while they're helping us. So to stay true, it really was focusing on, we have 3 programs. Everything's aligned around 3 programs. We have a Breaking Barriers Entrepreneur Workshop Series, which is designed for those companies that, like, they didn't have a business entity. They applied to VIR, but we couldn't service them, right? We still want to help them and get them to where they can. So we have a Breaking Barriers Workshop Series, which is designed, goes over how to get a business entity, rudimentary marketing, right? It's to get them going. But it's not a program. It's a workshop series that supports our Veterans in Residence program. So everything we do needs to point to one of these programs.
And I remember a version of that. It was prior to you joining their team. It was an online course that you would walk potential people that, because with my coaching of soon to be veterans, everyone's about, I'd say probably about 40% are like, I'm going to start a business, Otis. And I'm like, all right, bunkerlabs.org, and go check that out. Run through that process, because it's the foundation fundamentals, and which gets really to what I want to hit on, because this is the heart of what I think our listeners want to know is how did you came into an organization that had been around at a high level, fairly high level. I think when I remember when you started, you weren't where you are now. You've taken a step up or two, but still a fairly, decision maker level, and things were going wrong. I mean, I don't want to get into the details, but things were going wrong. We needed to right the ship. What, as the outsider coming in, how did you, what's the life lesson, the business lesson that we can apply?
Yeah, just real quick, because I want to touch back on so Bunker in a Box was probably the program that was the online one back in the day. We do still have a Launch Lab online program, which is, again, designed to, I have an idea, is it a business idea or not? And so there's an online program to help you do that. But yeah, so, I did 28 years in the Air Force, retired out of there, started my own design thinking consulting firm and consulting and training, and then got involved with Veterans in Residence here in Denver again, which was the initial location, and kind of got into the Denver veteran entrepreneurial ecosystem, which is where Otis and I met initially at a coffee shop in Castle Rock or something like that. But so I was a volunteer in the field, right? I was one of those ambassadors. We had a different name then, but I was a volunteer in the field for Bunker. Was asked to join the staff, and then I've had a few different jobs in the staff, and currently I'm the chief operating officer. So when the pandemic happened, right, we made the decision, and it was not popular amongst the people in the field or among some of the senior staff, right? But we made the decision to just cancel events for the rest of 2020. And this was in March, maybe April when we pulled the trigger, but it was early. And everybody's like, well, no, just cancel them for 3 months and then we'll do it again. And then we'll try it again. And we just, and it was, no, we need to remove as much uncertainty as possible. And just having it delayed was introducing more uncertainty into the equation. So even though it was unpopular, we decided the right thing to do was to cancel all events for the rest of the calendar year of 2020. Which the people who in the staff who didn't like it actually came back and said that was the right call, but they didn't like it at the time, right? Because they didn't want to cancel. It's what we do, and it was fun. So anyway,
I can imagine that. That's my thing. My thing is the bunker brews, right? I organize those. I show up for those. They're a lot of fun. I get to meet people, have a beer, and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So that
I just wanted to add the really interesting thing there is, it's kind of like setting up like a clean slate almost of you cancel them. But then, I'm thinking in my head, what I would say to somebody on the team. He's like, well, I want to run. Well, we can always add events. You can always start something new, but it's like reaching this like common ground to where we can actually confidently move forward without that uncertainty, like you mentioned, Hark.
Yeah. And so we made that call, which was tough. But again, we wanted to remove as many variables we wanted to provide as much certainty as possible. And then, but again, we're like, so we tried virtual happy hours. We tried virtual, town halls. We had guests on who were interviewed. But as you all know, like Zoom fatigue and like, do I really want to log in and watch another seminar on something? I mean, at first it was like, okay, right, we're trying to do stuff. With the PPP came out, we devoted a lot of time and resources to educating our entrepreneurs on how that works, paycheck protection plan, and that was useful, and it provided good information, and we got great feedback that, hey, thanks, you guys helped me. I was able to save 3 jobs in my company because you guys helped me understand how to do it and all of that. And so we did that, we tried that. But Zoom fatigue wears in, and it's like, what are we doing? How do we do this? We were running the Veterans in Residence program virtually, which that was always one of my pet peeves. Was it's an in residence program. That means you like show up in the WeWork, and obviously we couldn't. So we had a virtual in residence program. But anyway,
that'd be the V squared IR, right?
Yeah. So we did what we could, right? But and then all the town halls were distracting and everything, and really, and I give kudos to Blake Hogan, who's our CEO. He was really like, we need to, the power of our program is in our cohort programs. That is the power of our program. It's not in our bunker brews. It's not in our musters. It is the biggest impact we make is in our cohort programs. The other ones are broad, but not that much impact, or we went narrow with impact, narrower, right? Again, we have 230 entrepreneurs going through VIR right now. So it's not like there's nobody, right? So Blake was like, hey, listen, the cohort programs are really where we make the biggest impact. Let's focus there. And then we worked as a leadership team through that okay, how do we make this happen, right? Because at Bunker, we use the EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, is kind of our organizing principle. And Blake's the visionary, and then I'm the integrator, and the rest of the leadership team. And we're like, okay, how do we make this is the right vision? How do we make this actually work, right? And so that's been the focus for the last year. We created it last year. We say that last year we brought out these 3 programs, we revamped them, and we did good. There were things missing. It wasn't but it was good. So 2022 for
Folks,
us.
by the way, I know Hark pretty well, and when he's saying good, there's a reason he's saying good. So just so you know, that means it was slightly above okay.
Yeah. And so 2022 is for us is to innovate, iterate, and to go from good to great. So we're taking our lessons learned. Last December, we did the first Veterans in Residence Showcase, which was in 22 cities, one night, 197 entrepreneurs across the country being recognized for going through the program, right? And so, it was good. It was the first time we'd ever done it, but we also learned a lot of things. So we're going to continue, right? That was our MVP, right? We did it. We got it out there. Now, how do we go from good to great?
Well, there was something else too, and I know you did it intentionally, but there was a pause. There was, I always talk about, move forward, move forward, move forward. But you know what? Sometimes you got to take that canoe and you got to steer it over to the bank, and you got to step out and check out the rapids that are coming before you just hit them head on without checking it out. See, maybe a portage time. Those of you who know anything about whitewater canoeing, but it was what y'all did was you took a moment to pause, reflect, and go back to your strength. And I think that's the foundational lesson, folks, that is out there. That, man, when things are going crazy like that, and it's just all feels like it's all gone out the window, right? I mean, because you're right. My favorite thing about Bunker Labs was hanging out at Bunker Brewers. I'd get a couple of beers, chat with a few folks. It was fun. And now all of a sudden it ain't happening. It's like, who really are we? And discovering who you really are. That's the hard part. And that challenge right there. How did you and wow, I just drew a blank on Blake. Yeah, sorry, Blake. I drew a blank on his name. How did you and Blake kind of like just take that moment and say, all right, hold on, fellas? How'd you set that up?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it was we made the decision early, we're not going to do events. Like, let's remove that uncertainty. So that freed up. And then we tried different things, right? We tried these virtual town halls. We tried all these different things to try to figure out how we could support the entrepreneurs. We did the Paycheck Protection Program, seminars, all of these different things. And we were making an impact, right? But again, I wanted, Blake came back and was like, listen, I've been giving it a lot of thought, and where we make the biggest impact is our cohort programs. So let's double down, triple down, right? This is what we're going to do. And so it really was that, part of it was, right, what we used to do was fly around and go to these events, and right, that takes time, energy. So there was kind of, the pandemic was kind of a forcing function too, to go, hey, is this really the right thing? We had a 50-state strategy. We were going to have a chapter in every state in the US. Why?
Because
so we could have a chapter in every state, right? It wasn't about the needs of the entrepreneurs. It was about us saying, and again, I'm not saying it was wrong. It was the right at that time, right? The construct. But it really wasn't, because we were like in Rhode Island, and we're like, where in the hell in Rhode Island are we going to have a chapter? Where is there a big enough military community and entrepreneurial community? And when we were talking to the people in Rhode Island, they're like, we can just across the river, there's like a Bunker chapter. It's in a different state, I know, but it's like right there. And you want to set up another one? So really it was like, what are we trying to do, and how do we make the most impact for the community?
I think that the thing that you glossed over it, and I know, it was dark times. I mean, the lights were flickering, right? It was like, damn, do I write this check to pay the electric bill sort of times with the organization? By the way, folks, just a reminder, nonprofits still require money to operate, in case you forget. So you were in some dark times at that point, and yeah, those were some tough choices you had to make.
Yeah. So one of the amazing things, so we had we had a campaign with Macy's that was planned for in July of 2020, right? June, July of 2020, which typically brought in like $500,000, right? But it was an in-store campaign. And Macy's is laying people off, and they're like, we can't do it, right? I mean, and we're like, yeah. So we lost funding that we had depended on. On the other hand, because of the amazing relationships, it's about relationships, the amazing relationships our development team, our fundraisers had developed with our corporate sponsors. We had others who were like, hey, that money that we said you had to spend here, restricted funding, you guys decide where you need to spend it. And they provided more. They're like, hey, listen, we know it's tough right now. Here's an extra $200K. Because of the relationships and the fact that Bunker had delivered previously, corporations who are major funders were willing to like say, hey, you guys know what the community needs. We trust you. You've delivered. And we have these relationships with your development team people. Here, go do good things.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great business lesson. It's not something, I mean, heck, if the pandemic had happened, 5 years, we all say this about various places, but I'm sure there's businesses and nonprofits that were where you were. That I should know better than try to put phrases like that together. But you know what I mean.
Yes,
back
sir.
back a couple of years ago, y'all were still a pretty solid company, but those organizations that weren't at that point and they got hit by that, they didn't have that to fall back on. And I think the lesson I want to point out there is you got to start from the very beginning. When you're in that ideation, what's the relationships you're creating? What's the foundation? What's the fundamentals? And building that culture. We didn't really even touch on the culture of Bunker Labs and that desire to serve not the companies, not to hold up a banner and say, look at the millions of dollars that we've supported, but look at the veterans, the people that we've supported. And I think that's a fundamental difference in attitude and culture of Bunker Labs.
Well, and I would just say that even though we didn't touch on it specifically, we could hear it. You could hear it over and over again. And the way you talk about it, Hark, how, it all goes back to the why. When you're talking about these hypotheticals with other companies and with your company, you can always hear how the why comes back. Cause I think that's a big lesson there is, as much as we talk about, instilling culture in the team and that kind of stuff, what it really goes back to is if people understand that why and you're communicating that throughout your ranks, you're going to have a powerful culture.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're a staff of about 30 people. We're nationally distributed. I mean, the CEO lives in Nashville. I live in the Denver area. Our chief development officers in Chicago. Our chief programs officers in Memphis. So we were doing Zoom before Zoom was cool. But two of our program directors are out in California. Anyway, so it's about that culture. It's about reiterating it. And we're not perfect by any means, right? We are not, but we continue to work. In fact, our new board chair, she was a principal at the McChrystal Group, was out working with organizations to implement team of teams, right? The team of teams empowered execution. And in fact, I'm flying to San Diego tomorrow. And on Thursday, she is guiding us. She's guiding the leadership team and our directors through a set of exercises to help drive the team of teams approach throughout Bunker. So, we're continuing to work on that, but the mission and the why, everybody has their individual why, but the mission is the number. Every time we do a culture survey, it's like, that's everybody's like, that's at the, like, do you like the mission? It's like every time it's here. So.
Great news. So I'm going to shift us to what did you learn, since we already talked about some of the lessons learned there, and summarizing some of this. But for me was it's such a fundamental thing, and it's so simple, but we skip over it so much, is to remove the uncertainty. I talk about clarity all the time, clarity in your actions, clarity in your purpose, but you can't have clarity if there's uncertainty out there. So if it's there, remove it, move it, just cut it away. Those things that may or may not quite sure, so that you can laser focus on what is certain. Camden, what'd you learn?
Well, I learned that nonprofits don't get their utilities for free. No, I'm just kidding. No, really about how important it is to start with the why and then build to the how from there, and how much I can help in the problem solving process.
Hark, how about you? What'd you learn?
I learned you guys I already knew it, but it was reemphasized that you guys are fun to hang out with, and we need to find more ways to do that.
Yeah, we do. We do. We need to do a brew night, you and me, for a show.
I could probably be talked into that.
Yeah, I don't think I'd have to twist your arm too hard on that one. Sorry, Cam, you'll have to bring your own. It'll be BYOB in Tucson.
That's a business trip. Come on, we can get it.
Mark, how can people get in touch with you, man?
So it's bunkerlabs.org, right, is the website. You can check that out. It goes into more detail on all the programs and all the supporting initiatives. So bunkerlabs.org, O-R-G. I can be reached at Hark, H-A-R-K, .Herold, but it's H-E-R-O-L-D, hark.herold at bunkerlabs.org, or LinkedIn.
And LinkedIn, that's right. Yep, and we never even touched on the call sign. Golly. Hey, but Hark, man, it's been great having you on the show. Thanks for sharing some of the story about Bunker Labs. I am so fond of the mission, so excited that things are growing and we're getting more successful veteran entrepreneurs out there. That's great news, man. I appreciate it. Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank you all for listening to today's show. Special thanks to our guest, Hark Herold, for joining us today, and our sponsor, Tribe and Purpose. Find your tribe, find your purpose. You can check out recent episodes of The Cam and Otis Show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, and check out a full archive at thecamandotisshow.buzzsprout.com. The Cam and Otis Show is on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thanks again. We'll see y'all next week.